for one of the most egregious crimes in our country's history. However hard we try, ordinary language simply fails to reflect the enormity of what he did on the 29th of July last year. None of the most powerful adjectives even begin to suffice. There are no words adequately to describe what occurred, and I'm not going to try and then fail to find them. Instead, I simply observe that his crimes impose the heaviest of burdens on our society to investigate speedily but comprehensively how it was possible for AR to have caused such devastation, to analyse the decisions that were or were not taken by multiple individuals and organisations, given his deteriorating and deeply troubling behaviour, to identify without fear or favour all of the relevant failings, and to make comprehensive, sensible and achievable recommendations to ensure we have the best chance of intervening with and preventing others who may be drawn to treating their fellow human beings in such a cruel and inhuman way. The perpetrator was arrested at the scene. He entered very late guilty pleas to 3 counts of murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, offences of having a bladed article, production of a biological toxin, and possession of a document likely to be useful to a person preparing an act of terrorism. He was sentenced to custody for life with a minimum term of 52 years. If it had not been for his age, he would have received a whole life term. On the 20th of January this year, the Home Secretary announced that there would be a public inquiry. Work started as soon as my appointment was approved on the 4th of April, and the inquiry was formally announced on the 7th of April. It will have 2 phases. During the first, which will occupy us for the rest of this year, we will investigate the relevant circumstances surrounding the attack and the events leading up to it. This will include analysing the perpetrator's history and his dealings with all of the relevant agencies. We will identify the decisions that were made or not made, how information was shared, and the extent to which the risk he posed was addressed, along with any missed opportunities to prevent what occurred. This will necessarily be wide-ranging, encompassing the criminal justice system, relevant events during his education, his engagement with social and healthcare, his relationship with his family, and much else besides. During the second phase, commencing and completing next year, we will consider the wider phenomenon of children and young people who are being drawn into extreme violence, determining what can and should be done to reverse this troubling trend. I am deeply conscious that this is yet another public inquiry. The perpetrator's responsibility is clear. Whilst there was no criminal trial, many of the events regarding the attack itself have been established by the investigation leading up to his guilty pleas in the Crown Court. Many ask, therefore, why has the government set up another inquiry, given we already know what happened? I want to address these wholly understandable doubts head-on. Indeed, the Home Secretary herself has stated publicly why this inquiry is of such importance, having emphasised in her speech in Parliament that the responsibility for the attack lies with the perpetrator. The the Home Secretary added, and I quote, "The families and the people of Southport also need answers about what happened leading up to this attack. The perpetrator was in contact with a range of different state agencies throughout his teenage years. He was referred 3 times to the Prevent programme between December 2019 and April 2021, when aged 13 and 14. He also had contact with the police, the courts, the youth justice system, social services and mental health services. Yet between them, those agencies failed to identify the terrible risk and danger to others that he posed." How, Ms. Cooper went on to ask, did he fall through so many gaps? There are grave questions about how this network of agencies failed to identify and act on the risks. Answering those questions, with all the complex issues they raise, is the central task of Phase 1. What wider reforms may be appropriate will be the central question for Phase 2. There is, in my mind, absolutely no doubt that the 2 phases of this inquiry are a truly critical undertaking. We need to understand what went wrong and thereafter to identify and implement the most effective measures to ensure, to the extent that we are able, that there is no repetition. As a society, we are not helpless when confronted with individuals who are known to be contemplating acts of such depravity. And although no solution will be foolproof, we can identify all of the robust steps which should be taken to protect ourselves, and particularly the most vulnerable, from horrors of this kind. And this must be undertaken at speed to provide answers for the victims and their families, and to identify all of the changes that urgently need to be made.